Hey guys, Kariba Bros here with another Speed Duel deck profile. So obviously we're going over Gravekeepers, one of the original decks that came in the first two structure decks, and it's Gravekeepers is a weird deck in the sense that it's always been in and around like the meta. I mean, it's not played an awful lot at the moment, but you quite often see the deck played as like an engine. This is a pure variant, and yesterday there was an announcement on a new Speed Duel Devastator set, which is going to have over 200 cards in it, including 200 cards and 20 skills in it, with over 200 of those 220 cards being new. We're getting more characters such as Odeon and support for other characters that have been in the game before. So we might even get more Gravekeeper support in the future. But this is what we're playing at the moment, and the deck, I personally still like it. I think it's quite fast paced. Has the ability to destroy opponent's set monsters, which is quite prevalent at the moment because Dark Moth has changed the way Moth is played, so you can potentially get a sort of OTK out. And it also has the ability when you summon Oracle to reduce your opponent's monsters down by 2,000, so this is one of the few cards that can by itself beat over Moth. So firstly, we're using the skill Hidden Parasite. It's not really changed, so we'll use this in conjunction with Aerosol to make all our opponent's monsters insects and destroy their field when they have a big threat that we can't get rid of. This is very good, obviously, in matches such as like Relinquished, and the one that comes to mind straight away for another big boss monster that has great attack is Skull Servant, and obviously these will get over that. Going on to the monsters, obviously we play the 2 copies of Gravekeeper Oracle. So obviously this card needs 2 tributes to be summoned unless you're going to tribute the Gravekeeper monster, in which case you can tribute 1 Gravekeeper to summon this, and then you can activate one of the 3 effects. The most common one you're probably going to use is the attack deduction. So if you tribute a Gravekeeper, you can summon this and either reduce your opponent's monster's attack by 2,000, destroy all set monsters they control, or have this card gain attack times 100 equal to the level of the Gravekeeper monster you tributed. So if you ever get into the situation where maybe your opponent's got a Nightmare Wheel on this, you could tribute this for this to gain 1,000, so it becomes 3k naturally. So 2 copies of that. 2 copies of the Searcher of the deck, Gravekeeper Recruiter. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Gravekeeper monster with 1,500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. So it's basically Witch of the Black Forest for Gravekeepers. 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Ambusher, 1,700 beta. The effect doesn't come up an awful lot, but when this card is flipped face up, you can target one card in your opponent's graveyard and place that on the bottom of their deck, which is not actually great in this format at the moment. You don't really want to give your opponent more cards back in their deck because the game, the format itself can become quite grindy, and for example, we don't want to be giving our opponent stuff like Relinquish back into their deck, any of the cards that will search out their ritual monsters or spells and traps. We don't want to give our opponent their parasites back, and we certainly don't want to give them back their copies of Giant Moth. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard after being flipped up, you can target 1 Necro Valley card in your graveyard and add the card to your hand. These effects are unaffected by Necro Valley. Again, it doesn't come up in this format, but again, it's just the 1,700 beta, and we can search it off Recruiter. Do play 2 copies of Sphere Grebo. Feel free to play 3. I'm currently playing a 21 card deck. However, I just didn't want to make it a 22 card deck for the 3rd copy of Sphere Grebo. Gravekeepers only play 6 monsters that you normal summon or set, so that's why I wanted to keep the deck as low as possible. Justification is 2 Wonder Wand, so we can summon Recruiter, use Wonder Wand, get a search and draw 2, and then obviously bring Recruiter back later on in the game. 2 copies of Eradicating Aerosol. Obviously, we can use this to alter our opponent's board in conjunction with the skill. And if we're coming up against Dark Moth, we might not even need to use the skill. We can just throw this down, destroy our opponent's board, and it becomes a pseudo Regeki. Onto the traps. 2 copies of Dust Tornado. I was debating whether to play this at 3 and maybe cut down one other card, maybe such as either Sphere Rebo or another Aerosol, but I don't know, I thought the ratios were fine as it is. 2 copies, play around a bit if you wish. Very good to get rid of our opponent's Zomas, very good to get rid of our opponent's Nightmare Wheel so we don't get burned. 2 copies of Nightmare Wheel for ourselves so we can play the long game, burn our opponent up, put them on a clock, as well as they try and put us on a clock with burn damage. Obviously this stops us opponents, when this is equipped to an opponent's monster, stops that monster from changing battle position and attacking. And lastly, for the main deck, rounding out the 21 card main deck, 3 copies of Rite of Spirit. Target 1 Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target. This card's activation and effects are unaffected by Necro Valley, so we get around Necro Valley if we're ever going to play the Necro Valley skill, which we probably won't. But it's just the Reborn. We'll bring back the Recruiter. We can bring back the Oracle to have a 2k beta. It's just a very versatile card. As I say, when we tribute off a Recruiter with a 1/1, we'll get 3 cards, and then in our opponent's turn, we can bring a Recruiter back. It'll get destroyed. We can hopefully not take a direct attack and get another rad. So that's the 21 card main deck. Onto the side. So we still play the Lucky Day package, which is It's My Lucky Day, 2 Dice Foon, and a Time Wizard. So obviously if we come up against Dark Moth, this is great because we can keep the Aerosols in deck. We can side out cards. We might even side out 1 copy. We might even side out the 2 copies of Dust Tornado in favour of this because we can get rid of 2 of our opponent's spells and traps with It's My Lucky Day. So we could use It's My Lucky Day to out an opponent's Nightmare Wheel and a Zoma on the field. That way, when we don't have to attack over the Zoma and don't take the burn damage from Zoma's effect, as Zoma is still a trap card in the field, and Time Wizard obviously works in conjunction with It's My Lucky Day to become a board wipe. So that's 4 of the 6 cards, and then we just play 2 traps. A 3rd copy of Nightmare Wheel, just in case we do come up against a really grindy match where we just need to put our opponent on a clock as quick as possible, and a copy of Jar of Avarice. So in case we do come up against an opponent who's got like a 26 card deck, obviously we're searching and drawing, so we're more likely to deck out easier than they are. So if we side this and go in games 2 or 3 where we have maybe lost through a deck out, we can try and grind the match out a bit longer. Anyway, that's the deck profile. Let us know what you think below. As I say, I very much like Gravekeepers. It's a very fun deck to play. It's very simplistic and it's just quite enjoyable. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.